Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host as always. And joining me is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing today?
Can't complain, man. The birds are chirping. The Chargers are 1-0. Apparently, they're also the number one seed in the entire AFC. So that'll definitely continue the entire rest of the way. Good stuff, man. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good as well. I want to say the stop the count reference here as the Chargers are the number one seed in the AFC. But
Yes.
and if anybody's confused by that, it's because they won a divisional game, and so it breaks the tiebreakers first. So that's why. But no, man, I'm good. Today is the hopefully last day of summer weather in Fresno. So we're actually in the 70s next week. So right, today's 101, and then by the end of next weekend, we're down to the 70s. So I'm excited. I love the fall. It's like the one main thing I miss about like the actual state of Utah is having like a real fall season, because we don't get that here in California. In Fresno, we get it for like a week. So I'm excited for some cooler weather on the way. I just can't wait to wear like a hoodie. You know, you're wearing a hoodie now because you live in a cooler area, but like I can't wear a hoodie right now. It's too hot. And I just want to wear a hoodie, you know?
Yeah, well, I'm only wearing it inside with the air conditioning. Outside, it's 90, 100 degrees, and South Orange County is on fire. So that's where we're at.
That's true. Hopefully, if anybody here is affected by that fire, hopefully you're staying safe. So today's show, we're really excited about doing this episode. You know, when we obviously last season had our arrangement with the Chargers, we were not really able to do kind of a film review, you know, every single week. Sometimes the film gets uploaded late, and so we didn't have the time to always get to it. So we have both watched the all 22 coaches film, and we'll have some takeaways there. And I think it helps us kind of take a step back every single time and realize like certain things were either not as bad as they seemed, or certain things were not as good as they seemed. Certain players stand out when you're watching on film versus watching on the broadcast or in the stadium. So it's just going to be, you know, a good way for us to kind of take a step back each week and talk about the takeaways. So we have a few segments that we are going to do each week. The first one, you know, we're calling this whole thing kind of upon further review as we take a step back. So the first segment we're going to get to each week is going to be an unsung hero. Again, somebody that stands out on tape that not necessarily got a ton of attention on a live recap. So, you know, we talked about guys like Joey Bosa, Poona Ford, people that were a little bit more easily identifiable. Obviously, McConkey had some big moments. So we'll dive into that. We're also going to talk about a narrative of the week, whether that is a player or group development, a scheme standout, something like that that's kind of consistently popping up. Obviously, week one, we're just going to talk about week one, but that's going to give us a way to kind of measure throughout the season what is going on. And then the last one we'll touch on today is it real or is it fake? You know, there's week one stuff happens across the league. And so we're going to identify some things that we think are legitimately and will continue throughout the season, or some things that are fake and might not continue throughout the season. So should be a lot of fun today, Tyler.
Yeah, I'm excited. Is it real or is it fake? Is a game you can play in Orange County all the time. From a football perspective, we'll be able to talk about that too.
Yeah, nicely done. Nicely done.
Thank you.
All right, Tyler, let's start with the unsung heroes here. We both have two defensive players here to discuss, which I think will be a good conversation. We can maybe discuss an offensive guy here in a minute. But who is your unsung hero of your tape watching experience?
Yeah, for me, it's Morgan Fox. I think if you watch the game, you remember the edge rushers, you remember Poona Ford, maybe even Otito Ogbonia. But to me, even just watching it live, I went, wow, Morgan Fox is playing pretty well against the run. Surely, given the number of times I've seen him play well against the run, he must have had 25 snaps. They really must have upped his snap count. He had 7 run defense snaps, and 3 of them were run stops. He now currently leads the league in run stop rate by a lot, with 3 stops on 7 run defense snaps, and then 4 total. 4 total stops on the day. Last year, Morgan Fox had 8 on the entire season. His career high is 21. He had 4 stops on Sunday. He was really, really strong, especially for a guy who didn't play a ton of snaps. Very efficient. So we know who he is as a pass rusher. Watching him on film, I was genuinely surprised by this guy who is 276, 280 maybe, certainly not the heaviest interior defensive lineman. He's no Poona Ford. He's holding up very well at the line of scrimmage and playing the run very well. Again, to the tune of 3 run stops, so tackles within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage on 7 run defense snaps. So watching him, I kind of noticed it live, but after seeing the numbers and the fact that he only had 7 run defense snaps, and then what he was able to do on sometimes a run stop can be, I kind of disengage and I'm late and I'm shoestring tackling somebody. Like he was very involved and strong and stout in the run game. I was very surprised by him.
Yeah, I think he stood out, and he's had some moments. Like I think the San Francisco 49er game from 2 years ago, like he had a good amount of run stops in that one when the whole other Chargers defensive line got injured, and then it was just it was him and Braden Foco, and that was like it. And I think Forrest Merrill played in that game, so it was he's had some moments, but if he can play like that consistently, I think it just gives the Chargers some real depth. I think I feel pretty good about where Poona Ford, and we could talk about him, and where Otito Ogbonnia are at, but they want to keep guys fresh, and they're going to rotate all 5. Jim Harbaugh said afterwards that they would like to see more snaps for Tiara Tart, who I heard in the Alohi Gilman mic'd up. People just call him Ty, so much easier than Tiara Tart or however you want to say it. So Ty Tart is how we're gonna call him from now on, because that's what the team calls him. But I think if Morgan Fox can carve out a run stopping role, we know what he can do as a pass rusher, and he didn't get a ton of opportunities here in this one. But if he can consistently play like that, it just gives the Chargers so much more depth up front that they have not had in quite some time. So I think as the season progresses, we'll feel progressively better about the interior defensive line room, especially if Morgan can defend the run at a high level.
Yeah, I had a ton of questions about this group. I think we felt good about the average potential of the group. I did not expect to see what I saw, and we'll get into this interior defensive line, but I couldn't believe what I was seeing, especially compared to the last few years. Like, it's not even, expensive talent, first round picks, none of that. It's just great football. These guys are playing great football.
Yeah.
And it helped the linebackers. And I know you want to talk about a linebacker, so if you'd like to, for your unsung hero, please go for it.
Well, yeah, I guess we can just wrap up the defensive line conversation. I've been watching Chargers tape, like all 22 for 4 seasons, basically. I legitimately think Poona Ford just put together the best tape I've ever seen of any Chargers defensive tackle. And it's not like the Chargers defensive tackles have been amazing, right? There's been more bad than good for the most part. But this guy was unblockable against the run, like just had so many key run stops. I think he stopped 2 Raiders short yardage plays almost by himself. The guy, had a pass breakup on a screen play, and then he had the interception, and he had a couple like reps where the PFF didn't count them as pressures, but like he definitely pushed the pocket and collapsed the pocket and affected the play. So Poona Ford, I thought, was outstanding. I thought Otito, showed some real flashes as well. And Jesse Minter said that he's taken a massive leap. If he plays like that every single week and continues to get better, then I can agree with that assessment. So those two just started the game off so well. And we talked about them after the fact, but Poona Ford popped so much on tape. He was just consistently disruptive in the backfield, anchoring down against double teams. I was amazed. I could not believe what I was watching. And I was like relatively excited about him, and so were you. But I don't think either of us were expecting him to be potentially like the 3rd best defensive player on the team right away. So it was awesome. If they can get him to stay healthy and play like this, it's just going to make the defense that much better.
Yeah, I had no idea that was on the way. I looked at an article I wrote like a month or 2 before the season, and I ranked his contract as like the 3rd best of value contract of all the free agents that Ortiz brought in. And even I didn't see this coming, dude. Like, I thought pretty stout, good nose tackle. Hopefully gives you something else. But a pass breakup, chasing guys down the sideline, the pressures, or even just lack. Like, I think there's a lot of pressures that were on PFF, or lack of pressures, that I felt, sure, they weren't pressures, but they affected the quarterback, like you said. Like, you could really tell the condensing of the pocket very much so helped. I have not seen the interior defensive line and linebackers play such complementary football in a while. Yeah. And that's a surprise. Like, when they brought in Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson, and all these guys, you thought, okay, like, here we go. They never really got that. To be doing what they did with Perryman, Colson, and Henley, Perryman and Henley in particular, I think. I couldn't believe it. Like, this interior defensive line is right now way ahead of where I thought they'd be.
Yeah. And dude, the screenplay and the interception, like, this guy must have been a former defensive back, because like the technique there was incredible to see. Like, he played through the hands of the running back. It was fantastic. He, hands caught the interception. So it was fun to watch. It was even more fun to watch on tape. My unsung hero, you just mentioned him, is Mr. Denzel Perryman. I was so excited to see how this linebacker room would kind of put it all on tape after having a great camp, great preseason. And I mentioned Denzel Perryman as an X factor, and I felt like I kind of had a good feeling for what his role was, and he executed it perfectly on Sunday. Started off again on the first short yardage situation for the Raiders. Poona Ford makes the play. He's the one who gets the credit for the tackle for loss. He's the one who gets the credit for the run stop. But if I tweeted this clip out, if you slow-mo it, Denzel Perryman kind of creeps up to the line of scrimmage, takes on Dylan Parham, who's a good guard. He's not an amazing guard, but he's a good guard, and he's still a guard. He's outweighs Denzel Perryman by 80 pounds or whatever it is. And Denzel Perryman set the line of scrimmage, and he pushed Parham back, and he forced the running back to have no other way than to go right into Poona Ford. And so it's a little thing like that really stacks up, and he was consistently doing it. He had a couple of just fantastic flows to the football, run stops that were just really, really high level, really good couple run blitzes. I think his role is very well defined, and he's a run defender, and that's who he was when he was with the Chargers, right? Like the first time around. So we know what he can do. But I think it just frees up the other linebackers to kind of play more free, not have a ton of, things that they don't do super well. Because I like Deanna and Junior Colson a lot. I don't think either of them can take on a block the way that Denzel Perryman can, which is crazy because he's the smallest of the bunch. Like, when you watch the tape, the size of Dayon and Junior next to Denzel is always so funny to me, because Denzel is a few inches shorter and it just doesn't have the same kind of length. So I thought his role was very well defined. I thought he executed it perfectly, and it showed up on tape time and time again. So I don't think the way the Chargers defended the run on Sunday is possible without Denzel consistently just mugging up rushing lanes, taking on blockers, hitting people. The physicality was just outstanding to see. And so I definitely had to shout that out on tape.
Yeah, he's a perfect influence and captain for this defense and for this linebacker room. The way he plays is so perfectly complementary to the interior defensive line, and we've just been missing it. Like, is Perryman the greatest athlete at this point? Is he a young stud? Not really, but he plays awesome. He plays downhill in a way that we've really been missing. I don't know how long it's been since we've seen actual downhill tackling football. Even guys here in Drew Tranquil, I think, were great blitzers.
They're more space
coverage
guys,
yeah, but they weren't really like a Denzel Perryman, who the Chargers have been missing since he went away, and they never found a replacement for him with Kenneth Murray. They'd hoped. Was never that guy. Perryman was fantastic. I always forget that he's not a big guy. He's not small by any means, but like he's under 6 foot, not exactly a big guy, but he plays huge. He plays awesome. We remember it from him knocking over Mekhi Becton, I think. He's got no problem being physical, obviously. And that's such a tone setter for this team. I just see everyone in the defense, whether it's Henley, Elijah Molden had a couple of hits, like close to the line of scrimmage. Everyone's playing downhill. And I think Perryman just embodies everything they want and how they want to play, like Minter or Harbaugh, Chargers football.
Yeah, I think the pads were definitely popping on Sunday, and it was just a really, I think Poona and Denzel like started that right away, and you could just tell like the effect that those two had. And I'm just really excited to see what that looks like. Hopefully those guys stay healthy. Okay, did you have an unsung hero on offense maybe that you wanted to shout out before we move on?
It was kind of tricky. I almost wanted to say, in a strange way, Rashawn Slater, because he was so not as much discussed as the
Dude, the film was so good, man. And it always is. Like, when Rashawn is healthy, he's an elite film watch.
Yeah, I didn't realize, like, we talked about Joe Alt, great debut. We talked about the interior offensive line, not great. We even said that Slater was good. The pressure numbers were good, which ends up being 0. But like, I didn't realize how good it was. Like, Rashawn Slater, like, Joe Alt did well against Max Crosby and statistically did not allow a pressure. I don't think Max Crosby did a thing against Rashawn Slater. It was I have not seen Max Crosby that useless against a player, certainly not against a Chargers player, in quite some time. That was domination of one of the best players in the NFL.
Yeah, and in the past, he's had no reason to go against Rashawn because it's like he was just crushing whoever was on the opposite side. Yeah. Unfortunately for Trey Pipkins and Storm Norton, and I think he had a game against Trent Scott, if I remember correctly, in Oakland. Probably. So, he's never had any reason to test Rashawn, but now that the Chargers have Joe Alt, it's just been a good thing. Hero is probably a bit stretched, but I like what Quentin Johnston put on tape. I thought that he was much more comfortable, fluid, confident. I just think like I said before, I don't think he's going to put up a ton of huge numbers, but I just thought that he looked a lot more comfortable, more natural. I think the way that the Chargers are going to use him, I think just puts him in a good position to succeed. And I'm killing myself for not writing this down, but there was a statistical data account that I really like and I follow. I can't remember who it was, but he pointed out that Quentin Johnston technically was the number one read for Justin Herbert more than any of the other receivers on Sunday. So again, some of that was the design touches, and you have to go to that kind of person. But I think just the way that Quentin is going to be used, I think is going to be more conducive to his success this year. I know that he had the 2 sideline plays, which were not like amazing, but I think that can come with more success and more reps. So I just think, Hero again is a stretch. He didn't like light it up by any means, but I just think that he deserved a shout out at least.
Yeah, I was very close to going with Quentin Johnston or even Hayden Hurst, but Quentin Johnston, 3 forced missed tackles on 3 receptions. He looked like it just belonged. Like it made sense what he was doing. It made sense to him. He was comfortable with it. He broke a tackle. He forced a miss. I've never received so much pushback for just saying, hey, let's let Quentin Johnston do what he does well. And boy, the social media backlash on that one was something else. I personally think players should do what they do well, but maybe that's just me. And look, he did what he could do well, and he did it well. And maybe there's some confidence there. It looked better. Unfortunately, PFF gave him they considered that contested catch on the sideline like a failed contested catch, which sure, but he was out of bounds. But anyway, PFF has that as an 0 for 1 for him, which is a little bit of a surprise. But otherwise, I thought that particular role works. I think him and then McConkey doing those crossers and working after the catch, that's something they can hit that button all day long, and it's going to work for them.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that comes together. Mm-hmm. We can talk about the receiving room here more in a minute, but Quentin definitely deserves a shout out for how he played. And if he can just do that every single week, you can feel a lot more comfortable with where he's at just with his development. Mm-hmm. Okay. Narrative of the week. I messaged you guys about this, but I wanted to talk about Jesse Minter and just like his overall approach to the way that he called defenses. So I think we saw kind of a mix of what he wants to be up front versus like what he is maybe a little concerned about on the back end. And what I mean by that is up front, we saw the Chargers do so many different things up front with the defensive line. They put out the 4 edge rusher look, which we all wanted to see. When they did that, they also would have Morgan Fox or another defensive lineman. So they would have 5 defensive linemen up front with all 4 edge rushers. On every single rep, one of them would drop. It was usually Bud or Thule. So essentially they would rush 4. And it was just like a way for them to get creative. None of the plays really actually worked, which is unfortunate. But the Raiders did run 3 kind of smoke or screen routes to kind of combat that. But them putting that out on tape consistently is just going to make the opposing offenses have an extra thing to prepare for. And not every team is going to have, a Devontae Adams type who's really good at smoke routes and things like that. So it's going to cause some havoc from a game planning perspective. We saw a bunch of simulated pressures. We saw a bunch of creep pressures. We saw a bunch of blitzes. And there was, I tweeted this clip of like one of the sickest cover 0 fake looks things that I've ever seen, where he shows cover 0 with Derwin and Junior and Dayon and everybody all up on the line. And then he ended up dropping Poona Ford and Morgan Fox into coverage. And Junior Colson gets home on a pressure. Dayon Henley forces Gardner Minshew out of the pocket and results in an incomplete pass. which led to the Carlson missed field goal after that. So up front, he is going to push the limit and try and get creative and try and put these quarterbacks into a lot of uncomfortable situations. And then also you have Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, who are just like completely wrecking shop. On the back end, I was curious to see what the plan was for Devontae Adams and what the plan was for Jacoby Myers and everybody like that. And he was very cognizant of keeping Alohi Gilman and Derwin James over the top of both of those guys, which is smart to see. It's a good approach. And I think that indicates A, that he understands who he was playing against, and B, who he has at cornerback. It was a lot of conservative coverages. It was a lot of cover two man, cover three, these coverages that have a lot of help built in to these cornerbacks who he is, I don't think, supremely confident in. And I think some of that showed up with Asante. Christian Fulton did not really get tested a whole lot, but it's going to be this mix until one of these corners proves that they can play man-to-man consistently, which I think is what he wants to do. That's what Wink Martindale and this defense is built around, is a corner who can play man-to-man and you can be even more aggressive. So I think it's just this blend of, we're going to get after the quarterback, and then back, we're just going to kind of protect ourselves. We're going to limit mistakes. We're going to protect ourselves against explosive passes. We're not going to get beat over the top. And until somebody emerges as a reliable man corner, that's going to be the plan. And I think it's a smart plan. You can have a really high floor as a defense doing that. It's kind of what Brian Flores did this past season with the Minnesota Vikings, and they had a pretty high floor as a defense. So I was curious to see kind of what the approach would be on the back end, and it seems like he understands very well who he has playing cornerback and the kind of weaknesses that both of those players bring.
Yeah, it's a really nice mix. I love that he's able to, sure, if he wants to do different things in the future, fine. Find another corner, great. But I'm glad that he feels comfortable and is successful with playing conservative on the back end, not putting too much strain on these corners who, we'll see. We will find more about them in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
But then just wreck shop up front, and you can do that. You can do both and be successful with that. I'm very curious. Week 2, I think they'll send the house. Bryce Young's going to throw 42 interceptions. Week 3, no idea what's happening at quarterback, but it's not going to be great. I'm really curious how week 4 goes.
Yeah.
How that will tell me how maybe he wants to maybe play more, or how he changes things more. I don't think we'll get a ton outside of just go beat up the poor Panthers or go beat up the Steelers or whatever. But the Chiefs is a different story. So I'm curious how he plays there. I didn't get a chance to watch a ton of the defense, but I'm excited I'm happy to hear there's a good mix of what he knows he's good at and what he knows he maybe doesn't have, but they're still put in a position to succeed, which that's nice.
Yeah, it is nice. You're not asking passes prime Michael Davis to play man coverage against everybody, and it's just put on an island and make JC Jackson cover Tyreek Hill man-to-man coverage, first game back off of a major injury. Yeah. No, I enjoyed the approach, but I think for Jesse to really feel like he can properly run his scheme, like I think, a big physical press corner would be like number 1 at the list for next season. So far, again, it's week 1. It's a lot to talk about, but that's the next missing piece, because I think, and he said publicly, he feels great about the defensive tackle room. He has the edge rushers. They like the linebacker room. They really love the safety room, especially now with Elijah Molden, who you talked about. But can they get a true cornerback 1? That's the missing piece right now.
Yeah. Side note, seeing 22 out there and not having a panic attack.
It was funny.
I was watching from the stands. I'm like, why is he out? Oh yeah, it's Elijah Molden. I had just like, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was better than I thought.
Yeah, I'm a little bummed we didn't get to see AJ Finley, but I understand why they would prefer Elijah Molden instead, veteran presence, kind of deal. But I'm a little bummed that my guy AJ Finley didn't get to play on Sunday.
That's okay. As far as my, narrative of the week goes, unfortunately, let's talk about the interior offensive line, because it was as bad as we saw live. And I didn't watch the broadcast view, so I didn't get the breakdowns and all that, who specifically lost or how. But it was a bummer to see all 3 of those guys struggle. Not the entire game. There were good moments in the first 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter was much better. But it was a bummer to see them struggle in the ways that we kind of expected them to struggle. And the outcome was just kind of the lower outcome, We're hoping for any of these three guys to pop, and they really didn't. And they all struggled in the ways we kind of thought. So Zion Johnson, 3 separate times, could not pick up Max Crosby. Now, Max, I do think it surprised the Chargers a little bit how much Max Crosby moved. I think the addition of a Christian Wilkins was something that unlocked what he was able to do. Christian Wilkins, as much as you don't seem to love him based on his after the whistle antics.
Dude, he was watching the tape. He was doing extra stuff after whistle on every play. It was so annoying.
Yeah, I was actually about to go watch the receivers blocking and see if they messed up the Raiders DBs. But anyway, I think that really unlocked Max Crosby in a way maybe the Chargers weren't expecting, because it looked like in the first half, Zion Johnson had no idea Max Crosby was coming his way. It was Hankins or I think Butler. That was his initial guy. And then suddenly it was Crosby and no one was ready for him. So that was unfortunate to see from Zion, because that's exactly where he picked off last year. Bradley Bozeman, bad day at the office. Like, not great overall. I can at least kind of say Zion Johnson had some good moments in the run game, 2 great moments in the run game that helped free up J.K. Dobbins. Bozeman was not great, I don't think, in either the pass or the run. Better in the run, but not great overall. And then Trey Pipkins, at least he's just trying to figure out right guard right now, so I can give him some leeway. I can give him half a season to see how this goes. But he wasn't great either. So the whole interior, unfortunately, Zion hasn't improved. Unfortunately, Bradley Bozeman doesn't look great right now. Hasn't found his career resurgence just yet. And Pipkins looks like a guy who's trying to figure out right guard right now. Each of them has potential. Each of them has talent. Each of them has had good moments. But on Sunday, it was not great. And it does not get any easier moving forward. I guess, thankfully, Derek Brown, unfortunately, suffered a season-ending injury. But Chris Jones is almost here, man. And that Wilkins had his way. Chris Jones is coming up. It's not going to get a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and the Steelers' defensive line room is terrifying to me as well. It's a tough slate right now. The Zion stuff is really frustrating to me, and we both were, we weren't like broadcasting it, but like we were kind of optimistic that the breakout season was finally going to happen. And it got off to the worst possible start, and it's just the main issues with Zion, he gets over his toes too often, which means that he is late on plays. That happened probably 3 or 4 times, like you mentioned, a lot of Max Crosby, but it happened against whoever 69 was. I forget his name.
Either Hankins or Butler, I think.
One of those two. The big fellow with the dreads and
anyway. Yep.
So Zion, like he has these moments where you're just like, man, like you're doing the same stuff over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But then some of his run blocking plays were like top-notch guard level stuff. And some of his pass blocking stuff, like I do think that he settled down in the second half. I think his second half performance was indicative of a guy who can potentially break out. But to see him come out in the first half and just struggle with the same kind of stuff that he's struggled with for the last 2 seasons, it was frustrating. It really was. I still am hopeful that these issues are correctable. And now that this coaching staff has seen these issues on tape, hopefully they're able to say, hey, like, let's get together. Let's work on this. Make sure you're not doing the same kind of issues over and over again. Because in training camp, you probably are not really focusing in on hyper specific game plan, things like that. You're focusing on a lot of like install and, just like overall, working and conditioning and things like that. So now that they have like actual game plan and game technique things to work on, maybe that continues. Trey, like you mentioned, I'm going to give a little leeway too. He had some good moments in pass protection. He had some good moments in the run game. But his issues that I kind of expected showed up on tape. He's a little slow out of his stance, which as an offensive tackle is not a huge issue when you have a ton of space between you and the edge rusher. But when you have Christian Wilkins right in front of you, you got to be on top of your stance. You got to get out of there. And that just was not a thing. And so he's going to have some issues, in pass protection and in run protection from time to time, just because of that. He's not used to it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But again, I think probably more positive than not. Mm-hmm. But Bradley Bozeman, it was rough. And he's been injured. He did not practice a ton in training camp, which could have led to some of the communication issues. But when you are losing your one-on-ones, misidentifying blitzes, miscommunicating, and your run game is supposed to be your strength, was kind of a mixed bag. it was a tough day at the office. So I'm willing to give some pass to the interior offensive line for those reasons, but it was Bradley Bozeman in particular. It was a struggle on Sunday.
Yeah, that cannot be the case moving forward. I'm sorry, like Wilkins is Wilkins. I get that, but the rest of the group, the whole defensive line, like John Jenkins, Adam Butler, sorry, respect to them. I think it's an underrated group because we see them play the Chargers and they play well, but like this isn't the Steelers, like you mentioned. This is not going to be the Kansas City Chiefs who can line up a whole host of rushers. I'm a little worried. What did you make? I don't know how much you watched of it, but what did you make of the way Bozeman would call protections and how often a free rusher was just available?
Yeah, a lot of week one is figuring out like who is going to do what and like who's actually going to come on this blitz. So you kind of are guessing in week one of like where to slide protections and where to, handle these kind of issues. And the Chargers did do a much better job in the second half, but in the first half, they were like 4 or 5 times where they slid protection to the left, and then Tyree Wilson is a free rusher on the right, or they slid protection to the right, and they miss a slot blitz for no reason. And it's just it was an issue that they did improve upon in the second half. But I tweeted this out. That's where a guy like Corey Linsley just has such a strong influence. And Bradley Bozeman is a veteran center, but he's not a natural center. Like he kind of got forced to play center in the league and he stuck around at center, but not everybody can ID things the way that Corey Linsley, Jason Kelsey, Frank Ragnow can. And that's what makes those guys so great, along with a lot of the physical attributes. So I'm hopeful that things can kind of improve. I saw Justin Herbert take a lot more ownership in the second half of like, hey, let's do this, let's do that. And maybe that's kind of their solution, but he's also never had to do that because of Corey Linsley. So I think, unfortunately, it is going to be kind of an issue for the team this season.
Yeah, I hope things get cleaned up. Thankfully, they started rough, but things improved in the second half, like you said. So maybe that's indicative of what's to come. It's not a dumb coaching staff. It's not an untalented group. I think they can figure it out, but they've got a game to really figure it out, or it's going to cost them because Herbert was... I can't believe Herbert wasn't sacked 6 times this game from the interior. It just speaks to how good he is at sack avoidance.
Yeah.
But he was hit so many times. We talked before the show. There were several plays where I don't know how he got it to 3 separate players, but he was crushed because of some of these interior guys. And thankfully, he got it out to a J.K. Dobbins or a Will Dissly on the first play, I believe.
Yep.
And he kept getting crushed because these guys couldn't figure it out. So hopefully they do.
Yeah, even the touchdown to Ladd, Zion and Bozeman were trying to pass off a stun, and I forget who it was specifically on the Raiders, but whoever was the pinner ended up taking Zion and Bozeman out at the same time, and they like their legs got crossed up and they both fell over, and somebody was in his face like right away. But Herbert, again, we talked about that he didn't have his flashiest game, but the sack avoidance is, I think, right up there neck and neck with Patrick Mahomes in terms of like best in the league of avoiding sacks and avoiding taking those negative plays. And even the one sack that did happen, like he almost got that ball off. So it's just it's such a strength of his. I think it really gives the Chargers such a high floor. And I think there's a lot of discussion on like football Twitter right now of like what's leading to the fewer passing touchdowns and the low points this week. It's because a lot of these quarterbacks are taking a ton of sacks. Like Deshaun Watson took 7 sacks and Caleb Williams took 6 sacks and Will Levis took 6 sacks. Like it's a problem around the league, but Justin Herbert can do no wrong in that regard. He's just so smart about it.
Yep.
Me and you, before we started recording, he almost hit Ladd in the corner of the end zone for the touchdown on that one play. And I think him and Mahomes and maybe Josh Allen are the only quarterbacks in the league who could A, get that ball off, and B, throw it accurately, where if Ladd McConkey were an inch taller, that's probably a touchdown. So it was a clinic of how to avoid taking sacks from Justin Herbert on Sunday.
It was. You can look at the numbers and say, oh, he had a bad game. And I'm sure it wasn't a 300-yard. It wasn't the 400-yard Vikings game. But there was a lot of great stuff in there in terms of pocket movement. Yeah, that this close to that play to McConkey being like the play of the week.
Yeah.
Well, he was that close to an elite play.
Yeah. So somebody early in the chat was like, "Is Justin Herbert cooked?" No, not even close.
No.
The Chargers, like, once they got into a rhythm in the second half, the offense looked a lot more comfortable. It looked like, okay, I can kind of see like the bones of this offense working and coming together. It's so hard to establish a rhythm when you have 3 false starts, a holding penalty, a sack. Like the first half was kind of a disaster, to be honest. So
Yeah.
this game against the Panthers, I'm expecting this essentially to be, hey, like, let's get in a rhythm. Let's test some things. Let's experiment some things. We didn't really see the Chargers do a whole lot of play action on Sunday because they were just trying to get the ball out and avoid all the pressures.
Yep.
This week, I think we'll see really the Chargers kind of, establish a rhythm on offense.
Yeah. Oops, wrong person. Sorry. As Damage points out, and you just said it, the way the interior played. Yeah, you can't exactly throw the ball down the field. Also missing DJ Chark. So if that can improve, we'll see, a not cooked Justin Herbert.
Yeah. All right. Let's do real or fake. Obviously, as Tyler said, this is kind of an ode to Huntington Beach in Orange County and all that. In all seriousness, I wanted to do this conversation because we fell for so many things in week 1 last year, particularly about like the run offense and things like that. I'm trying really hard not to do that again. So I wanted to do this real or fake conversation. And we can go either way with it. So Tyler, for you, what did you want to hit as either real or fake from week 1?
Let me continue with me being somber and grumpy. So this Scott Matlock thing at fullback, it's really cool. And all the trades ran with it. Like, look at him, put a 300-pound defensive tackle at fullback, which is, I don't know what happened when McFadden became the fullback, but I guess he's not a defender, so it's not as cool. But that can't be the best option, guys, at fullback. I just watching him and the specific look. Now, full disclosure, or to be honest, I didn't see a flat route to Scott Matlock coming. It fooled me. That was not on my bingo card. I didn't think that was happening. But you're trying to seal the game, and that's your option. And it just doesn't look right, Steven. And watching it live, watching it on film, it looks like a defensive tackle who just found out he's playing fullback. Yes. And Matlock has played a lot of football, so he gets football. I'm sure he played offense at some point as well. He's very talented, very athletic, but it looks like a defensive tackle who's playing fullback for the first time. And it doesn't even look like McFadden, who's a blocker, who understands, all these things about how to be at least a blocker on the move. With Matlock, it doesn't work for me. Now, it's early. He could develop into this guy. Very possible. But they're not using him much as a defensive tackle. I think he had 16 reps, which is not a lot. And as a blocker on offense, I would prefer a true fullback. Honestly, someone who can actually catch passes, someone who can block maybe a bit better, who's a comfortable runner, who's blocked before. And I think Matlock maybe is something you explore, like maybe as the season goes. But they put so much faith in him as a fullback, and I right now do not buy it.
No, I don't buy it either. I would have bought like, hey, like this is going to be an occasional goal line thing, and like this is like a fun little wrinkle of the offense. They were asking him to like block defenders one-on-one at sometimes and like, full lead up into the hole and like try and kick out a linebacker. That's just not who he is as a player. And maybe he can become that. But I would much rather see them use their tight end room and use Eric Tomlinson and Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst and put one of them in the backfield. Let's get Jordan McFadden. They didn't put Jordan McFadden out there at all after like jet sweep motioning him in training camp the first week, and all of us lost my mind. All of us lost our minds, including myself. So it was puzzling to see them go full in and like treat him as a normal, fully functioning fullback, and it did not work. So hopefully it can continue, but I would much rather see Eric Tomlinson out there. I would much rather see Jordan McFadden out there, who are actual professional blockers of defensive linemen. So it was a cool wrinkle. It was a cool story. The usage has got to come way down, in my opinion, if you're going to maximize who he is as a player.
Yeah. So that's my unfun take. I'll go with, what I think is real at least and go with something more positive. We've discussed this, so I won't spend too much time, but Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater could finish the season as the best offensive tackle duo in the NFL. Rashawn Slater, based on the way he played, might be the best offensive tackle in football if that's how he's going to play against someone like Max Crosby and other edge rushers like that. If Joe Alt can at least also be what he did on Sunday, improving the run game, be a little bit better overall, that's the best duo. Like, these guys are legit. I wasn't like dying to see if Neighbors or Odunze or Harrison Jr. or Alt were better or whatever. But I think about 5 minutes into the first quarter, Chargers fans almost panicked because like Malik Neighbors had 66 yards or something, and the Chargers receivers weren't great. Honestly, man, after watching Joe Alt play, if that's what we're gonna get, and he's only going to get better, it's the right pick, man. And so it was the right pick. At minimum, he's going to be great, I think. And so I truly believe this duo is special.
Yeah, whenever the Raiders did just the normal like one-on-one rushes and the interior offensive line could hold up, dude, Justin Herbert could have like taken a nap in some of those pockets. Like, it was just gorgeous to see. You're talking about like best potential tackle duo. I think right now that's probably the Eagles' offensive tackle duo with Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. Lane Johnson to me is like potentially one of the 4 or 5 best scrimmage players in the league. Jordan Mailata is like clearly above average, clearly a very, very good football player. So if Joe Alt can continue to get better, they can bridge that gap. And Rashawn, I think, is an all-pro caliber left tackle. They can challenge that. And you can talk about maybe the Buccaneers offensive tackle room, I would probably say the Lions are second right now. But again, Taylor Decker is like above average, very solid, good football player. If Joe Alt keeps this up, man, like, you're talking about easily best tackle group in the league, because Joe Alt just has that high of a ceiling. The issues that I think he is going to struggle with popped up in this game, just like functional strength, which is understandable. Again, this is a guy who's very new to offensive tackle. This was kind of an issue at college, but the sophomore leap that Joe Alt is going to put together with a full offseason of Ben Herbert, and maybe we can get that guy down to Texas and train with Duke Manyweather with Rashawn Slater. It's just going to be incredible to watch. Like, the run blocking flashes were there. There was a rep where the Chargers ran left. I want to say it was like Trey pulled. So it was kind of like a trap counter kind of deal. They asked 6'9" Joe Alt to go reach block a one technique Christian Wilkins, and he got there and he sealed him off. And I was like, "Woo!" I could have cut out the play because it ended up being a tackle for loss. But flashes for Joe as a run blocker, as a pass protector, were so good. And some of his clean slate against Max was a couple reps that were like, ball out quick kind of deal. And Max kind of did, not cleanly beat him, but he beat him around a corner kind of deal. But some of the anchors were hilarious. Like, there was a time where Max tried to speed to power him, and Joe anchored right away. And I love to see that, because that is kind of a weakness of his. And Max tried to like jump up and maybe bat down a pass. And you see Joe just like full extension, and the 6'9" length is crazy. So the flashes from Joe Alt were so much fun. And if he can just clean some things up and just like, continue to get stronger, he can be one of the best players in the league. I think his ceiling is so tremendously high after seeing that.
Yeah. Huge sigh of relief, at least after one game. I can't wait to see this duo moving forward.
Yeah. Going to be a ton of fun. Okay, one thing that's real for me, we kind of talked about the defense. I had that marked down. I don't think we really need to hash that out, but I want to shout out Ladd again, because I think the way that he played is just indicative of somebody who's continually going to grow into a security blanket type of role and just continue to gain Justin's trust. And the way that he played, one little detail that matters a lot about Ladd is he always attacks the football. And a lot of young receivers don't understand that once you get to the NFL, these cornerbacks are really, really good and they can close the gap in a hurry. And Ladd can really just be so good at attacking the football. His first catch, I wasn't, crazy about the way that play that was designed. And then Justin kind of threw it back to the inside and forced him right back into the defender, which is not great. The second one, which is where he would line up outside and he ran kind of a curl back. It was like a deep curl. He created the separation at the top of the route and he came right back up and attacked the football. And then he turned around and dove for the first down. It was beautiful. It was textbook kind of route running. And then late in the fourth quarter, he had a stick route, and Justin Herbert kind of threw a bad ball, and he ended up getting sandwiched between two defenders. But he full extension plucked that ball, and he just like his hands are so sound, and things like that add up when you're playing with a guy like Justin Herbert, because he is going to continually, express how much he trusts you by the way that he throws you the football. And so I think Ladd had a fantastic debut, and the way that he attacks the football, the way that he gets open, it's just really trending towards those two developing a really, really nice rapport, great relationship. I would love to see him get some more vertical opportunities, but I was so pleased with the way Ladd got open on tape, the way he attacked the football on tape, created yards after catch, created a couple first downs, and then obviously the touchdown was just nasty work from after the catch standpoint, and he hit him with a "it's over" celebration after, which I love to see. So I thought Ladd was fantastic on tape. I thought he was fantastic on Sunday, but it just really is trending so positively for him potentially being the number one receiver this year.
Yeah, he looks the part of the reason they drafted him. I can't wait to see what they can do down the field, but just the knack, even from the first comeback, I think maybe from the slot on the right side, he caught the football, created separation, came back, caught the football, and immediately just knew how to turn, get past the defender, and get a first down. Same thing on that shallow crosser for the touchdown, made two guys miss. He just gets it. He gets space. He gets how to get open. He gets how to move. It's exciting to see what they're going to do with him. It feels like the Chargers got their, I don't know, Zay Flowers, I guess, in the second round. Like they found their twitchy yak guy. And frankly, I think McConkey is honestly was a better prospect, particularly with the hands. So excited to see what he does. But, for as much as we love Palmer, there's definitely something McConkey has that he doesn't. And so if he becomes the wide receiver one, especially with Chark's absence now, I'm excited to see what he does. But I think so far, just based on what he did in one game, he's worth the selection. At least he showed why he's worth the selection.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So all things very, very positive for the first two rookies of the Chargers class. The third rookie, I think, had some really positive moments, and this is my what is fake. The fake of this game, I think, is the Chargers pass defense. I think they finished 11th in EPA per dropback this week, or 12th or something like that. A lot of it, I think, is fake because Gardner Minshew left a lot of meat on the bone. Like, this is a guy who just was not seeing the field the way that I think you probably should as an NFL starter. There were a couple snaps where Devontae or Jacoby Myers are like literally wide open, and Gardner Minshew does not even look that way. So it's just it was very nice to see certain things, but one thing I am concerned about from a growing pain standpoint, these two young linebackers, Deion Henley and Junior Colson, when it came to like dropping for depth and dropping to match routes, had some really, really big issues there. And again, neither of these players have played a whole lot. A lot of that can come through reps, but I think in the short term, against better quarterbacks, these linebackers are going to have some issues. And, Brock Bowers had some really nasty moments against these linebackers. And again, Gardner Minshew was not able to take advantage from time to time. So I think the Chargers defense got off to a really, really positive start. There were a lot of encouraging signs, but I think the coverage aspect from the linebackers and the cornerbacks is still a concern of mine. And, I got a lot of like top 10 defense comments on Sunday. I would like to pump the brakes there. Again, a lot more positive than negative. But when they play Patrick Mahomes in a couple of weeks, like they are going to go after these linebackers. They're going to go after these cornerbacks. And shit, they went after Roquan Smith in week 1, man. Like it's a concern for me of what these better quarterbacks in the league can do against these linebackers until they get more comfortable in the scheme, more comfortable dropping. It's all through experience. I still believe in the ceiling. I'm not questioning them as players or anything like that. But just the lack of experience really showed up like probably 15 times on tape for those two.
Oh, wow. Yes, I didn't get to the back end of the defense to see what was going on there. So that's a bummer to hear. I know the numbers, like 11th in EPA, great. That's pretty solid. Christian Fulton statistically had a solid day. Zont, not so much, both in terms of like analytics perspective and also just raw stats perspective. Not great there. What was very apparent to me, and I'd have to actually watch this, but I think you agree, the linebackers, in terms of getting depth, it felt like several times, maybe even particularly with Deion Henley, where I felt like he would just stop his feet.
Yes.
And it was very easy for Minshew, if he had time, to find someone over him and between him and whoever the DB was. There were several times where if I expected Henley sitting in a zone to see Minshew and shift, move, get depth, whatever it was, and break up the pass. And watching it live, I'm like, why would you throw that? He's right there. Henley's going to move to that spot. He just never quite did. So I agree with, that part of coverage. I'm definitely wait and see. I look, I didn't think they'd be able to handle Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers, whether it's on Minshew or not. The outcome was better than I expected. So I got to give him props there. But sure. I do want to see it against, like you said, a Patrick Mahomes. What does that look like? Heck, even Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow or whoever it is, guys that are not Gardner Minshew, not going to self-fumble and all that jazz. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not like red alert, like this is going to be an issue for the team all season long. And they can continue to get better. But if this version, like if the Chargers had to go play Patrick Mahomes right now, like the linebackers are going to have issues. If they have to go play Joe Burrow right now, they're going to have issues. The good news is they'll play Patrick early, but then they don't have to play Joe Burrow and these better quarterbacks until very late in the season. So they're going to be able to learn and really get their feet wet. I mean, Junior missed the bulk of training camp, and I feel good about him matching up individually in coverage. Like he had a great pass breakup on Michael Mayer that really showed like where he's at from a man-to-man perspective. But it's just different when you're playing cover 3 and you have to drop to the hook and then you have to match routes and you have to be able to keep communicating. It just felt like both of them were kind of static there. And so against some of these better quarterbacks, I think it'll be an issue. I'm not like pumping the brakes on them as players by any means, but I'm not fully buying into having like this amazing high-end pass defense when stuff like that is going on and Asante is struggling with the same things he's always struggled with. And Jasir Taylor, Christian Fulton were targeted 5 times combined. So it's just, I'm kind of, pumping the brakes a bit on the defense overall, but the defensive line was awesome. The run defense was great. The safety play was fantastic. So a lot more positive than negative, but the pass defense, I need to see it against a better quarterback first. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Minshew, Luke Getsy coordinator combination is not exactly one to be feared. Heck, even Steichen and Minshew was obviously a much better combination before. So yeah, Reed, Mahomes, whoever it ends up being, got to see it. And if they do this, if Kelsey has 59 yards or whatever Bowers had, Rashid Rice has 56 or whatever Adams had, then I'll eat crow. That's top 10 defense en route to a top 10 defense if they're healthy. For sure. But just got to see it. So not pessimistic. You aren't pessimistic, but we just don't buy it yet. Even though statistically it bore out pretty well, I'm not so sure just yet. Yeah. And listen, man, you can beat up on these bad quarterbacks and be a top 10 defense in this league. Like we've seen that time and time again, top 15 defense, and you take care of business against the non-elite quarterbacks, you can have a great season. But if for these two players in particular to reach their potential, they got to get more comfortable back there. And I do believe that can come with reps. Yep. All right, Tyler, I think this was a great conversation. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We're excited about doing this every single week. Do you have any final thoughts from the All 22 tape that you watched this week?
I do not. I'll get to one, just not necessarily all 22 comment, but people are asking about it. And then also the super chat from
Oh,
Easy
thank you.
Shada. Did you guys feel like Pierce mentally waved the white flag on the infamous 4th and 1 punt? Yeah, I thought he waved the white flag on the field goal. I think as soon as the Chargers realized the Raiders were just folding, then they took over. Like, part of them taking over was the Raiders blinked, the Chargers didn't, and they won that game.
Yeah, I think when you are not a great team, you gotta take chances in those situations. And I think for the Raiders in particular, some people were saying like, oh, like the defense was playing great. In my opinion, that's a reason to be aggressive because, in the 4th and 1 situation, at that point in time, it was still 16-10. And if you had been able to go score a touchdown or even score a field goal, that tremendously helps your chances of winning the football game. But if you punt, the Chargers have a chance to go score and essentially end the game. Like, the risk is way higher from punting, whereas if you go for it, the worst that can happen is the worst that can happen also if you punt it. So the benefits of going for it there were just significantly greater.
Yep.
And the analytics, the data models, whatever one you like, it was like one of the most obvious go for it situations of the weekend. And if not like it was crazy high that like you go for that like 9 times out of 10 times out of 10 kind of deal. So yeah, it was bad. The field goal, I can kind of understand because Carlson's a great kicker and he can usually make that kick. Like when he missed that kick, I was stunned at what I saw, especially in a dome. So the field goal, I can kind of understand. The punt, I was like, what is this guy doing right now? Like, this is a chance for you to go potentially win this game. And instead they were like, we're good.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Thank you.
Sure. Yep. Thanks.
Did you have something besides the super chat?
Oh, people are asking about J.K. Dobbins versus Gus Edwards. How close are we to a switch that J.K. is the official RB1 if he wasn't already?
I think J.K. is more naturally a talented runner. I think his vision is higher, but I think Gus Edwards is going to have a lot of value to this team still.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Roman said they're going to ride the hot hand. I think obviously that is J.K. Dobbins right now. But this next week, when you're playing the Panthers and you're trying to like pound the football, like I do think we see Gus have a pretty big game this week. So I think we just need more data. Like,
yes,
JK looked good, but he's also coming off 2 major injuries. And he said on the Pat McAfee show, I feel like I've been 100% for months now. That's cool and all to say, but we've seen so many players really struggle with these kind of injury recoveries. So I think we need more data. Gus also had some injury issues during training camp. So I just think we just got to wait and see right now. I think JK is in the lead, but I'm not ready to cement him as like true RB1. And I don't think they're really ever going to be like, a workhorse situation. I think it's going to be close to a split every single week because I think they trust both of these running backs to play.
I agree. Any final takeaways from you?
No, that was it, man. It was a great film watching experience. I got to watch quality blocking tight ends for the first time in a long time. Will Dissly had a rough first quarter from a penalty perspective, but I thought he had some great moments in the run game. On Gus Edwards' big run, he was like the key linchpin to that play. So I think Daniel Popper tweeted out a clip if you want to go watch that. So I thought Dissly was really good as a blocker. I thought Hurst was good as a blocker. Tomlinson, again, play those 3 guys, not the defensive tackle who just never played fullback in his life.
Yeah, I'm open to other solutions.
Yeah. But it was a great experience. I love watching tape. I nerd out. It's great. I love it. It's a fun time.
Good stuff.
All righty. That's going to do it for us today. We are going to be live on Thursday, I believe, at 5:30 or 6 around same time. It's Thursday night football of week 2. I'm not like too keen on I'm not too worried about missing it. So you guys will be here, I'm sure, but we wanted to podcast at a normal time instead of at like 9 p.m. like last week. So we'll be live on Thursday for our Panthers preview. I don't know how many things we're going to talk about of keeping us up at night about this matchup, but we'll find something, I'm sure. But it's going to be a fun time. We appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff does help continue to grow the show. This has been the Guilty as Charged podcast. As always, bolt up.